Oy, TikTok ba yan? Oy, sali. Oy, whoa. That's good. That was beautiful.
Okay, I'm uploading now.
Uploadable, yeah.
I'm uploading.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, ito na.
If you had 5G, upload it there, like, right away.
Wow, what a segue.
Hey, I can do that too. Because today's episode is about journey to 5G.
So, Mikael, for an average person like me, what is 5G? How is that different from the 4G on my phone right now?
Okay, let's rewind to the days of 1G. Take these guys out. 1G started back in the 80s, and back then you could only do analog voice calls. And then 2G came in the 90s. We had another cell tower because we could do voice calls and SMS, aka
Texting.
Tama.
Yes.
And then with 3G, that enabled us to browse the web on our phones, which was super cool back in the day. And 4G, of course, we know this. We're streaming content all day, every day with everybody around us. And then, of course, we have 5G.
5G.
This is just mind-blowing. It opens
Mind-blowing.
up so many possibilities.
So many
It's
possibilities.
crazy. It's super exciting.
It's super exciting.
It's everything.
It's everything. So, parang gusto ko na ngayon mag-5G. It's fast, no?
Oh, yeah, it is. I actually have an analogy for you. Let's take these people out. So imagine 4G is like you're on a 2-lane highway. You're in your sedan, driving along with other cars. But on 5G, you're in a 10-lane highway in your sports car.
Wow, intense!
Yeah.
0 to 60 in no time. Look at me, car reference.
Yeah, that's actually really important because 0 to 60 is referring to latency, which is also faster in 5G.
Let's go back to the car.
One more analogy. I got you. So if speed is referring to how fast the cars are going, latency is referring to the driver's reaction to when the stoplight turns green.
Okay.
Super quick. Not as quick.
Sounds awesome. So my Instagram videos are gonna be crisp.
Yeah, they're gonna be super crispy, but 5G does have its drawbacks.
Okay.
Is that 5G has a shorter range, which means it requires more base stations to cover the same number of people in one area. Fortunately, there is a pro. 5G base stations and antennas are more compact, which means they're easier to install than 4G.
Okay, so thanks for telling me the pros and cons, but I still think it's pretty worth it, My mobile content consumption will be on point.
Oh yeah, it definitely will be, but just wait until you hear the potential use cases for 5G. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Think a smart city where you're having drones delivering packages to you.
Wow.
Super cool, right? This is my favorite. Self-driving cars, that's the future.
Okay, I'm game for all of that. I'm so ready. I'm gonna start saving up right now. Where's my
You
wallet?
actually might not have to save up too much because
Why?
there are a lot of affordable 5G phones out right now. I know one is the Huawei Nova 7 SE. My wife has that. Hi, wife.
And hi, everyone.
Oh, it's okay, Janina. But anyway, stick around for the next episode if you want to know the actual use cases of 5G today.
Oh nga, Vermonts na. Hi, Dad. Don't you love your favorite only daughter? I love you.
Professional.
I love you. I thought you cut it out anyway.
And they might not. Thank you guys so much for watching, and to learn more about 5G and how it brings us closer than ever to the future, don't forget to watch Possibilities, the 5G series.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Globe on the Radar YouTube channel, as well as turn on that notification bell para you guys won't miss us that much.
Galing talaga. That's Janina.
That's Mikael.
See you guys.
Bye!
In a Business 4.0 world, we analyze, adapt, transform, and grow. With over 400,000 IT experts, Tata Consultancy Services leverages the power of digital technologies to reshape global businesses and industries, empowering communities and individuals across the world, building a better future, future forward.
Mahigit sa 20,000 na ang confirmed
ng PPE
isa sa ilalim na ang Metro Manila sa
Wala na. Wala munang mga food court at fiesta. Meron namang lutong bahay. Wala munang window shopping. Meron namang free shipping. Wala munang happy hour. Pero may isang oras pa. Tulog pa tayo. Wala muna yung aircon at only coffee sa office. Pero andyan yung dream office mate natin. Biruin mo, wala munang quiz night, band night, samgyup night, pati videoke night. Pero meron ng time sa family night. Wala na munang pasyalan, wala na munang bakasyunan. Okay lang siguro mawala lahat ng yon. Huwag lang ito. Kasi may mga bagay na walang kapalit. May mas mahalaga ba dito? Wala. Rediscover what matters. Rediscover home.
Break through a world where big data beats your worries. A world that gives you priority when innovations come. This is the GigaLife on Smart Signature. Simplified by the Philippines' fastest mobile data network. The choice is simple. Move up to Smart Signature and make your mark. How do I know it's meant to be? Simple, smart, ako.
Good morning to our viewers. Welcome to this episode of BusinessWorld Insights on the state of internet connectivity in the Philippines. I'm Willie Reyes and I will be moderating for this episode. Conditions under the pandemic have pushed most sectors to increase their use of digital platforms. Where do we stand today in terms of internet connectivity, which enables the use of these platforms? And what improvements can consumers expect towards the end of this year and in 2021? Joining us to give their views today are key government and private sector officials at the forefront of this issue. Our first panelist heads the Senate's Committee on Public Services, which has been tackling bills designed to improve internet services nationwide. She has authored bills that seek to establish ICT centers of excellence, or hubs, in all districts and regions. Another measure that aims to improve competition in the industry, and still another that requires telcos and internet service providers to widen coverage and imposes a minimum of connection speed. She is also the principal author of a resolution for the Education Department to grant internet allowance to elementary and secondary public school teachers for their online classes. Welcome, Senator Grace Poe, and good morning.
Good morning. I would like to thank BusinessWorld for organizing this forum, and I'd also like to greet those that are online now watching this, and also, of course, our other confirmed guests, Attorney Adrian Echaus, Mr. Genio, and also Mr. Mario Tamayo, and to the other panelists here today. I was just watching your presentation earlier, or actually one from Globe and one from Smart, and I think that they were very well done and very informative. I like the way Globe presented the importance of a 5G network, and also PLDT. I like the tagline, rediscover what matters, rediscover home. So today, a digital divide exists in the Philippines. According to the 2019 National Household Survey, While there are Filipinos who enjoy access to the internet, majority of them do not. For instance, in BARM, or the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, 94.9% of households do not have access to the internet, and surprisingly, in the National Capital Region, only 32.3 households have access. The difference in internet speed in highly urbanized cities versus the speed in rural areas is also significant. The average speed in highly urbanized cities registers from 4,500 megabits per second, or Mbps, to 5.54 Mbps, whereas in rural areas, it registers at 2 Mbps in Luzon and Visayas and 1 Mbps in Mindanao. In comparison with other Asian member states, the Philippines has a relatively low fixed broadband average speed at 3.0 Mbps, slower than Cambodia, Brunei, Malaysia, and Singapore. It has the sixth cheapest fixed broadband rates, but the most expensive rates for mobile voice, nearly double that of Vietnam and almost 3 times more than that of Thailand. In the global arena, the Philippines ranked 55th out of 63 economies in the IMD World Digital Competitiveness Ranking of 2019. The ranking was based on 3 indicators. First, knowledge, or the capacity to understand and learn the new technologies. Number 2, technology or competence to develop new digital innovations. And 3, future readiness, or the preparedness for the coming developments. Now, let us look at the other significant indicators. In 2018, poverty incidence in the Philippines was estimated at 16.8%. This translated to 17.6 million Filipinos whose income was not sufficient to meet their basic food and non-food needs. Sadly, due to the pandemic and quarantine imposed in the last few months, these numbers may have worsened. In the period March to May 2020, an estimated 65.9% of business temporarily closed their doors. In July, the number of unemployed Filipinos was estimated at 4.6 million, and 20.9% of 5.2 million Filipinos experienced hunger. Thus, if a person is hungry, we can assume that he would rather spend his last peso on something to bite rather than on mega bites. But if we acknowledge that internet access is a necessity, then we should treat it as a public good or service, much like access to water, education, or public transportation. We are obligated to provide internet service that is not only reliable and fast, but also affordable. How do we do this? Current studies on data transmission industry point to several issues that must be addressed. Some of them include the lack of infrastructure due to expensive and tedious network rollout. Number 2, the lack of players, hence the lack of competition. 3, a shortage of spectrum frequencies and lack of transparency in their allocation. 4, a lack of performance standards to which service providers should be held to. As the chair of the Committee on Public Services, this area has been one of my major concerns. To address these challenges, I filed several bills such as the Better Internet Act. I can discuss this more with you as we go, and I hope we can have a productive discussion. Salamat po.
Thank you, Senator, for showing us from the onset how much work needs to be done to catch up even with our neighbors in the region. The next panelist is Attorney Adrian Echaus, Deputy Spokesman of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, and a graduate of the Ateneo de Manila School of Law. Good morning, Attorney Randy. I understand you also have a short presentation for us.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Let me just share my screen. Ayan. Can you see it, sir?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Senator Grace po, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Genio, Mr. Tamayo, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So on behalf of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, so I'll be discussing briefly our plans and projects as well as the state of internet connectivity in the Philippines. So let's start with just a few statistics on where we are at now. So the Philippines is the 12th country in the world with the highest number of internet users, with around 79 million users in Q1 of 2020. So the Philippines is number one with an average of 9 hours and 45 minutes spent on the internet daily. The Philippines is also number one with an average of 3 hours and 53 minutes spent on social media daily. The Philippines is the 6th biggest Facebook user in the world with around 76 million users. So we're just behind Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, US, and India. Based on the SWS survey, fourth quarter of 2019, so around 45% of adult Filipinos are internet users. So the percentage of internet users by locale, so 59% are in urban areas, while 34% are in rural areas. So in NCR, 65%, Balance Luzon, 49%, Visayas is 39%, so percentage of internet users, and Mindanao is around 32%. So in terms of speed, there has actually been an increase in speed in the past few years. So according to the Ookla Speed Test Global Index, so since July 2016, there's actually been an increase of around 216.94%. So based on this, as of June 2020, the average internet speed for fixed broadband download is around 25.07 Mbps. For mobile download speed, there's been an increase since 2016 of around 127.82%. So the average speed as of June 2020 is around 16.95 Mbps based on Ookla Speed Test Global Index. So the Philippines is currently the 33rd in Asia in terms of speed for fixed broadband, while we're 35th in Asia for mobile broadband speed. We are currently 20th in Asia Pacific for fixed broadband and 25th in Asia Pacific for mobile broadband. So also, OpenSignal released a recent study also that says that Philippines actually improved the video experience score by 32% compared to 2019, ranking 4th in the world in terms of percentage improvement next to Thailand, Nepal, and Senegal. Also, the past few years, we've seen an increase also in the capital expense of the telcos. So there has been an increase, of course, because of more competition and more policies and more towers. As of 2020, based on reports, Smart is actually spending around 70 billion for 2020, while Globe is spending around 50.3 billion. So what are the issues right now? So actually, one of the main issues is actually the lack of ICT infrastructure in the country. So yes, the speed is also an issue, but one of the main issues also is the coverage. So because of the lack of ICT infrastructure, we're unable to reach the farthest areas right now, because you have to think of it as a road. So if there's highways, there's also digital highways. So if there are more roads and the better paved roads, then you can get to your destination quicker. So the government needs to actually put up their own ICT infrastructure. So we should not leave it all in the hands of the private sector. Kailangan din yung government natin magpatayo ng sariling ICT infrastructure. So just for comparison, so these are the sample of government investments in internet in some of our neighboring countries. So example is South Korea. They invested around $24 billion for their public internet backbone. Taiwan spent around $2.4 billion to upgrade their digital infrastructure. New Zealand is actually investing right now around $2 billion for their ultra-fast broadband network. to cover their country. So what is the government response to this right now? Here in the department, we have actually a lot of connectivity-related programs focused on ICT infrastructure development. To name a few, of course, currently we're actually pushing for the National Broadband Program, and we also have the Common Tower Initiative. So these are some of our programs in accelerating ICT infrastructure in the country. So what is the National Broadband Program? So just quick background. So it's actually the blueprint for the acceleration of the deployment of fiber optic cables and wireless technologies for the overall improvement of the nation's internet connection in terms of speed, reliability, affordability, and accessibility. So, because meron kasing papasok into our country of around the 2 terabits of internet bandwidth, we're actually going to be activating the cable landing station in Baler, Aurora, and then we will light up in National Grid Corporation nodes and connect to San Fernando, La Union. So with this bandwidth, what will happen is that we will connect with the actually what will happen is that for the National Broadband Program, because of our limited budget this year, we actually divided it into phases para mas ma-capitalize yung existing budget natin. With this, we're actually implementing this year is the phase 1 of the National Broadband Program. So what's going to happen for the phase 1 is that we will be lighting up around 4 DICT nodes and 15 NGCP nodes. So the coverage is not that much, but the good thing is that it covers from Baler to San Fernando, then it will go around the Tarlac, Baguio, La Trinidad, areas of Region 2 and 3, and down to NCR. So ang gagamitin natin dito is actually the remaining budget of DICT, which is around 1 billion pesos. So hopefully yung mga nearby GovNet and free Wi-Fi beneficiaries natin, mabibigyan natin ng bandwidth for this. So magandang project to yung phase 1 natin, but of course, we're aiming to cover the entire Philippines. So what are the benefits of this National Broadband Program? Just a quick rundown. So actually, currently, government offices spend around 350 pesos per megabits per second of internet bandwidth per month. So that means an average size agency, which requires 100 Mbps internet connectivity across the whole building, spends around 35,000 per month or 400,000 pesos a year. So with the NBP, the average office would now only spend around 5,000 pesos or around 60,000 pesos for the same speed, saving the taxpayers money that can be used for other programs and projects. So our estimated savings for this phase 1 of the National Broadband Program is around 720 million pesos for the first year of implementation. Of course, we want to cover the entire Philippines in this. So phase 1, hopefully we can finish it by end of the year or early 2021. For phase 2, we actually we're actually asking Congress right now for additional budget for this. Hopefully we can finish the implementation of the phase 2 by the end of 2022. So this will actually cover the entire country. We will light up the 96 NGCP nodes. We will be constructing 10 microwave radios towers in Tawi-Tawi, Itbayat, Mahataw, Catanduanes, Oriental and Occidental Mindoro, Siargao, Puerto Princesa, Marinduque, and Quirino. And we'll be putting up also additional GovNet sites. So hopefully we're asking if this can be implemented with an additional budget of around 17 billion. So, well, kailangan natin to. Kailangan ng bansa to para mas mapabilis ang connectivity ng ating bansa. Hopefully, Congress will listen to us and give us a chance. And of course, once we reach the Senate, hopefully po, sana si Senator Grace po, mapakinggan din kami, saka mapabigyan din po. In addition to this, we also have the Common Tower Policy. So we recently released Department Circular 8, or the Guidelines on Shared Passive Telecommunications Tower Infrastructure. So actually what we're doing right now in the department is we're actually creating a new industry of independent tower companies. So itong mga tower companies, these are independent from the telcos. What's good about this is that mag-co-location na lang yung mga telcos dito. So makikikabit na lang sila one tower that can be used by all the telcos. So mangyayari is these telcos can actually reduce their capital expenditure, tapos mas mapapadami natin yung towers natin ngayon. So in relation to this, we also released a joint memorandum circular with ARTA. So this is for the streamlining of the process requirements. May mga other agencies rin dito, such as yung DILG, CAAP, DHSOD, FDA, and others. We're actually reducing the mga permitting procedures because one of the problems also in putting up a tower was that masyadong maraming mga permits. So dahil dito sa JMC na to, na-reduce yung mga permitting requirements from 200 days to roughly 16 days. But of course, the good thing is that nagkaroon na tayo ngayon ng Bayanihan 2 Act, of course with the help of the good Senator Reyes po. Yung most of the permits required to put up a tower was actually suspended. So I believe naiwan na lang yung mga building permit for CAAP at saka yung sa mga homeowners association. I believe si DHSOD also released requirement for this para mas streamline din yung release of the permits. So with this common tower initiative, so the telcos can actually reduce their capital expenditures, operational costs, mas mabilis yung permitting, saka ma-maximize yung limited resources. Currently, we have around 24 companies, both local and foreign, that have memorandum of agreements with the department. We also have around 14 that have signified interest, additional interest. We've released provisional licenses for them to operate right now, valid until December 31 of this year. So they're all complying now with their license requirements with the department. So hopefully tuloy-tuloy to na mas mapadami ang mga towers dito sa country because again, the density is just masyadong dense yung tower industry dito sa country. I believe we only have around roughly mga 20,000. Our neighboring countries around have mga 50,000 to 70,000. So kailangan natin ma-fast track ang mga pagtayo ng towers. Of course, this should be done hindi lang ng government, kailangan magtulungan din with the private sector para tulong-tulungan tayo to improve the connectivity in our country. Lastly, we also have the free Wi-Fi for all program. Ito po yung based on Republic Act 10929, ito yung free internet and access in public places. So naglalagay kami ng mga free internet access points in public places such as schools, parks, government hospitals, libraries, government offices, and mga state universities and colleges. So currently we have around 5,046 sites around the country, serving over 5 million unique users. Ngayon, one of our objectives is actually to fast track the rollout in mga public schools and state universities, of course, para magamit ng mga students and teachers for the opening of schools. We're also fast tracking also the free Wi-Fi in mga government hospitals saka yung regional centers para rin magamit ng mga nasa quarantine. So our target actually for end of the year is around 10,069 sites. For public schools, we're targeting around 2,575. For state universities and colleges, around 1,804. So hopefully, tuloy-tuloy yung mga projects projects natin. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the proper budget for 2021 po sa Congress and we can implement more programs and improve the connectivity po ng bansa natin. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Randy, for that overview of what the government has been doing and plans to do.
Yes.
The next panelist is Mr. Genio, Globe Telecom's Chief Strategy Officer since 2010 and its Chief Technology and Information Officer since 2015. His responsibilities include enterprise architecture, products, network, IT security, and analytics functions. He drives the overall vision, development, and execution of technology, architecture, and strategies. Hill, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the state of internet and connectivity in our country. Mobile phones, and we talked about open signal here. Mobile phones that have open signal that allow it to measure speed even when they're not using it. Basically leads open signal to report recently in August that mobile internet speeds in the Philippines are up to 8.3 Mbps with an availability of 4G of about 83%. Ookla, which is a slightly different methodology, measures Philippines mobile internet at 16.4 Mbps and fixed internet at about 25.3 Mbps. Both OpenSignal and Ookla acknowledge the growth over time of speeds in the Philippines. But you and I know speeds are one measure. Because it's an average, if you're in the bottom 1/3 of the speed distribution, you're not happy about the overall speed. So obviously our job is how to keep moving the averages higher and higher so that even if you're in the bottom 1/3 of speeds, that you will still feel a significant improvement in your speeds. Globe has been consistent in our position that the fundamental digital infrastructure in our country needs to be solved by everyone, not just by telcos. And I recall in 2017, in the very first DICT organized telco summit, we talked about what are the factors that put us behind our neighbors and the challenges of building infrastructure. In fact, some of the people in the audience might even remember that in 2017, I publicly praised examples of local government units and homeowners associations that welcomed cell sites and fiber. But I also gave, and I was brave enough to give some examples of LGUs and homeowners associations that did not want cell sites or fiber infrastructure in their locations. In fact, some LGUs even passed ordinances preventing sites in residential areas, which of course is now regrettable given the pandemic. Google mobility reports show over the past 6 months, there's been a 43% reduction of people staying at work and a 23% increase in people staying in their residences. So obviously, preventing cell sites and even passing ordinances preventing sites in residential areas had been a misguided work. But of course, today, thanks to the work of the Anti-Red Tape Authority and the issuance of the Joint Memorandum Circular, permits have now come at a fast pace. It has come in such a fast pace. In the case of Globe, for example, I was kind of surprised, even pleasantly surprised, that in 2019, we added sites double that of 2018. And in 2020, because of this Joint Memorandum Circular, we might actually even exceed the number of sites we added last year, even though there's been a lot of disruption caused by the pandemic in terms of construction resources. Of course, going forward, the passage of the Republic Act 11494, or commonly called the Bayanihan 2 Act, will simplify further this process. And it is a real window of 3 years that will usher in a very real build for telcos and digital infrastructure. Now, our target is clear. The examples has been already long debated and stated. The examples are very clear, right? Vietnam, with a similar population as ours, has 90,000 towers. Indonesia, with triple at least the population of us, has almost 100,000 towers now. While OpenSignal says that our mobile internet speeds in relation to GDP per capita puts us somewhere in the middle of the pack with respect to Southeast Asia, in reality, there's 3 countries, which is kind of interesting because they talk about Myanmar, Laos, etc., that are able to beat that quote-unquote middle of the pack. No? So Ookla, for example, says we are number 120 on mobile internet, while Indonesia is number 117. In fixed internet, we are 106. Indonesia is number 110. So we have to progressively get up in terms of the number of sites and number of fiber in the country to be able to beat our neighbors. Today, our country has about 22,000 towers. My own personal ambition is if the country can get to about 50, 60,000 in the next 3 years among the 3 players, and of course with the work of independent tower companies, plus of course intense competition among now 3 players in mobile, that we will actually get to a decent kind of like penetration for mobile internet. Of course, there's now also intense competition among 3 players on fiber rollout. that will also dramatically change the landscape of internet connectivity, because in reality, homes today, and there's like 25 million households in the Philippines, all of those households, for a variety of reasons, work from home or for education, does require fiber going forward. And the statistic that is important for us to remember is that there's now, as Google Mobility Report says, there's now 23% more people staying in residences than before. And I think that probably is going to be a trend that's going to last for a few more years, given the situation that we are here. But because of the changes that have happened recently and the commitment of all players, I'm actually optimistic and hopeful that we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hill, for that outlook. Next, we have Mario Tamayo, Senior Vice President for Network Planning and Engineering of PLDT and Smart. Good morning, Mar.
Good morning, Willie. Thank you very much for this chance to be part of this very important and relevant forum. COVID-19 pandemic has brought us to unprecedented situations. With the new norm, we rely heavily on connectivity to enable us to conduct our affairs every day and to communicate with our family, friends, and loved ones. It has accelerated the adoption of e-commerce, and more companies are going digital. It has changed the way people use and consume content from the internet, as well as it reshaped the locations where they use it. Now, more than ever, telecommunication has become even more relevant. In the early months of the pandemic, PLDT offered free speed boosts to fiber subscribers in Greater Metro Manila, and Smart increased its data allocation for postpaid customers. We saw data traffic surge by 30%. PLDT and Smart were able to manage well, and we were able to cope up with the demand. However, we are not satisfied because we know there are a lot more to be done. And we welcome the initiatives laid out by Senator Grace Poe and Attorney Echaus, and we are committed to fully support all these endeavors. We managed to expand and reach our capacity both on the fixed and the wireless networks across the country to cater to the increasing customer demand amid the pandemic. All these were made possible because of the PLDT Group's massive investments in capital expenditures in the past 5 years. 5 years ago, we can say that our services leave a lot to be desired. We failed on all expectations. So we one-heartedly decided to start on a journey anchored on one thing: customers, customer centricity, and customer experience. Since then, we've made strides steadily, improving the quality of internet connectivity by introducing the latest technologies available for both fixed and wireless, as well as steadily improving our reach in the past few years. We continue to monitor our progress through the lens of third-party independent global benchmarking companies, the likes of what we have mentioned, Ookla, OpenSignal, and Umlaut. The PLDT and Smart networks were even cited for several recognitions, consistently for the past several quarters. However, the work does not stop there. As I've said, we are not satisfied. We recognize that there are still opportunities to have more of our countrymen connected, and the demand will only increase further. That is why we continue to invest. Our main aim is to bring the Philippines, with the help of the government, to the level of the best in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mar, for your views. Maybe at this point, let's start the discussion first on matters of policy. So let me throw the first question to the good senator. Yes, Senator. I just like to get this out of the way, because in your committee now is one bill that is a priority for both houses of Congress, Malacanang, and the business community. That's the proposed amendment to the 83-year-old Public Service Act to open telecoms to greater foreign participation. Offhand, when do you expect approval of this measure, both at the committee and at the plenary?
Well, Mr. Reyes, actually you pointed out something quite important about this bill being a priority. And for the information of our audience, ang Public Service Act po ay isang batas na napakaluma na, at ang sinasabi dito, halos lahat ng kumpanya sa ating bansa dapat ang mayorya na may-ari ay mga Pilipino. Maganda ang naging layunin nun so that we can keep our countrymen in charge of business here in our country. On the other hand, with the changing needs of our country now and the global demand, competition is very important. And for that to happen, you have to liberalize ownership. So it's been my advocacy to allow foreign ownership in most industries in the country, except for the three, when it comes to power distribution and transmission, and water distribution and sewage services. So ibig sabihin lahat, even media, even telecommunications, we should allow foreign ownership. And why? This is so that we will encourage more players to come into the country, and we will have more choices. Right now, although the duopoly is, I'm sorry to use the term, but there's really two main companies in telecommunications. We have Globe and Smart. Now, maybe they're trying their best at this point to be able to fulfill our needs, but the reality is if more players come in, then the public will have more choices, and the two companies will also be forced to compete to be able to provide better services. Now, where are we at this point in the Public Service Act? I will be honest with you. It has reached some sort of a halt in the Senate because of the timing. Alam niyo naman na ang mga bills dahil yan sa timing. Marami sa aking mga kasamahan, at ako rin naman ay nag-iisip rin, that if we allow liberalization to happen at this point in our political history, others are worried that one country might dominate ownership now and jeopardize our national security. So, without mentioning the country, alam na ninyo kung anong ating pinag-uusapan dito. Ngayon, how will we prevent that from happening? The debate now is how are we going to put safeguards in the Public Service Act so that we won't be threatened by one country or just a few countries dominating and probably dictating the course of the economy in our country. We are putting the safeguard which will allow the president to veto or to cancel any contract that might prove to be a national security threat. Of course, it can't just be a unilateral cancellation. There has to be proof that there's actually a national security threat, and we have to list down what those conditions are very clear before the president can actually do away with the contract. So this particular provision had to be included in the new version of the Public Service Act bill in the Senate so that we can convince and allay the fears of our countrymen and also our colleagues with regards to this bill. So for now, the Senate is focused on, number one, the passing of the 2021 budget. As the speaker from the DICT, Mr. Echaus, pointed out, they're asking for more budget for the National Broadband Service, and I think that this will be closely looked at to make sure that the DICT, the government, has the absorptive capacity to actually use that amount in the soonest possible time. 17 billion from 1 billion is a big gap. 1 billion this year, now they're asking 17 billion for next year. I believe in a good national broadband service, and I also commend the new shared tower policy that we have. So this is actually just a few of the initiatives of the government, but I also filed a bill for the Better Internet Service Act. Now, what does this do? It will require telecom companies to actually have an acceptable rate of speed for our internet. Like if, for example, you advertise na dapat you can deliver 27 Mbps, you should be able to provide at least 80% of that most of the time. Hindi pwede yung sasabihin nyo 50 Mbps, up to 50 Mbps, pero that's only offered 10% of the time. That's not acceptable. So these are one of the things that we're putting in. And as I also as mentioned also earlier, in the Bayanihan 2 Act, we took advantage of the opportunity to put a provision there that will require the government to give a permit to a telco company to put up a cell tower within 7 days, and also do away with more than 25 signatures and permits that was the norm, to reduce it to 2 crucial permits only. Number 1, to get the proper building permit. Bakit? Para masigurado natin ang kaligtasan ng mga tower na yan. Hindi naman pwedeng pipitsugin ang struktura. Baka mahulugan pa tayo ng mga tore. Number 2, we should also look at the height restriction, especially if you're going to be building near an airport. Ano bang safe height ng mga towers na yan? Now, it was also mentioned earlier with regards to the homeowners associations. True, that has been a hindrance in putting up cell towers in certain areas. So this is our solution. Kung kayo nakatira sa isang subdivision, we respect your choices, at least for your area. But we also know that sometimes it can be a hindrance to progress. So what we did was this. If you have a homeowners association and you have a board of officers in that association, right now, we will not rely on what the board only says. Kailangan lahat ng miyembro ng subdivision na yan ay makaboto kung papayag sila na magkaroon ng cell tower sa kanilang subdivision para mas mapabilis ang kanilang internet speed or cell signal. Yan ay naayon sapagkat marami sa inyo may mga anak na nag-aaral ngayon pero online sa bahay at naiinis ang mga bata minsan mahina ang connection. And even more important, a lot of you are also doing work from home, and signal is very important. So we will allow now the homeowners to actually take part in the decision-making process and not just leave it in the hands of the board members of the homeowners association. And we will give them a deadline for them to be able to come up with a decision for that. So these are just a few of the initiatives that the Senate has and the Congress has rolled out. So thank you again for the opportunity to be able to update you on this and to hear also your updates.
Thank you, Senator, for all those ideas that you've pitched here that I understand the Senate is now handling or dealing with. But going back to the PSA, I just wanted to raise one more, I think, basic point that a former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court raised recently about the PSA, that it would be tantamount to interpreting as well as redefining terms in the law, which is a power that properly belongs to the High Court. How will that consideration or that concern weigh on your discussions in the committee?
This is why it's been a struggle to pass this bill, because we are looking into other constitutional concerns, saying, for example, that some industry should be wholly Filipino-owned. But then also in the Constitution, public service is not clearly defined, and public utility, the definition of public utility and public service has been intertwined when it's not supposed to be. So when you say, what is a public utility, we can simply define that now in the law to be only restricted to the ones I mentioned earlier. So what we're doing now, in actuality, is trying to clearly define what a public service is and what a public utility is, so that we will not run into some constitutional quagmire. So again, just to stress, the definition that Congress is trying to come up with, a public utility, meaning these are the areas where only Filipinos can have a majority stake, will remain electric distribution and transmission, and also water, sewage, and distribution service. So when you talk about telecommunications, when you talk about other industries, this will be liberalized if we pass the PSA. But again, I don't want to give you false hopes, because right now we're focusing on the pandemic. This will be a lengthy debate by many of the members of the Senate, because, as I said, they are worried about the national security implication, especially, candidly, when it comes to telecommunications. Just a few weeks ago, ang pinag-uusapan natin, bakit natin pinapayagan ang isang kumpanya katulad ng DICT Communications that is owned by China Telecom to put up cell towers in our military camps. And in exchange for putting up those towers, they're not even going to pay us rental for those towers. They are going to exchange services and technology. So you mean to say they will be allowed to look at the system of the military? And we know that there's a policy in China that says all government-owned companies and even private companies have a duty to the central government to report whatever it knows. So with that, there's a thin line between reporting business information as well as, and on the other side, political information. Can you imagine if our military is discussing our strategy in the West Philippine Sea and others will be able to snoop in on that discussion? So we have to be very, very careful in crafting this law to make sure that there are proper safeguards and exceptions.
Thank you, Senator. Maybe we can go to this matter of infrastructure. I don't know who can answer. Maybe Attorney Randy, you. Throughout these discussions and the presentations, I hear the magic number 50 to 70,000 cell towers. And correct me if I'm wrong. Somehow I get the feeling that that means if we have that many, that number of towers, then we'll have reliable, affordable internet connectivity throughout the archipelago. Do I get that right? Or where did that 70,000 come from? We just benchmarked Vietnam, is that it?
I can answer that. As I mentioned earlier, Vietnam has 90,000 cell towers for a similar population, actually slightly less than the Philippines. And so for us to achieve the same level of performance of on the mobile side as Vietnam, for example, all things being equal, all things being considered, you need to have at least that many. Because cell towers not only add coverage, but also they add capacity. And the only way you can support 20, 30 ever-increasing Mbps speeds is to be able to put an even more cell site density. The same site density as the US also translates into the Philippines using population density as also 90,000 in the Philippines. But as I was saying, even if you get to 50, 60,000 over the next couple of years, taking advantage of the 3-year window of the Bayanihan 2 Act, I think we will have also a significant improvement in mobile internet experience.
Right. I hear, I heard that it's 3 years. So it will take 3 years to reach that number. But at the same time, within that time, you have this increasing demand for connectivity, for online lessons, households and businesses going more digital. Does it mean that it will take that long for us to have the minimum amount of experience online?
No, I don't think so, and I can give it to Mar after I speak. But because households today have a choice of using mobile internet when there's no other option, or more importantly, the future-proof way of doing that is fiber, as Mar would know.
Yeah, Mark, you were raising your hand.
When we talk about internet connectivity, somehow we tend to be synonymous to cell site. But building network is more than just building cell sites. It's a combination of, it's an ecosystem of different network elements coming together. For example, for you to provide a good quality, good speed, and good experience, then you need to have the fiber connected. You need to have those cell sites interconnected with each other, those cell sites connected to the core or the data center, which handles all your calls and process all your data transactions, and it has to go out to the international cable. So simply put, when we talk about network, it's really an ecosystem, including the handset that you use, to provide that quality. Now, I agree, we need more cell sites in certain areas, especially in the rural areas, but really cell site is not the ultimate answer to everything. There are a lot of other ways that we can do Uh, First off is to make sure that all the relevant infrastructure needed to build that ecosystem are robust, reliable, and redundant, so that at the end of the day, we provide what is needed. Uh, there are still a lot of things to be done. We're far from being perfect, and that's why, as mentioned earlier, there will be a lot of investments, capital expenditures that we really have to shell out as a private sector to provide that. But in all of these, we need the help of the government. That's why we said we welcome the initiatives being laid out uh, by Senator Po and the DICT.
Okay, maybe I'll just bring in a question right now from one of our viewers. Why are telco? Well, the senator's spoken a bit about this, but anyway, why are telcos prioritizing building cell towers in residential areas instead of industrial and commercial areas? Why insist on building in urban villages where they are not needed instead of far-flung remote areas which are not yet covered?
I can speak to that. In my opening remarks, I even mentioned that some LGUs have even passed ordinances preventing cell sites from building in residential areas, which is so contrary now to what's happening over the past 6-7 months, where 23% more time of people are actually in residences. And if you're going to work from home, educate from home, do your e-commerce, etc. at home, you need internet. However, you can get it: fiber, copper, wireless, right? So that's the reality today. Historically, what has happened is because of the extreme difficulty in residential areas, whether it's LGU or HOAs, most of the cell sites actually had been, in fact, been on places of work. Also, principally because from a mobile perspective, when people go out, that's where they need internet, the places for work, right? But as I was pointing out in the statistic, there's now 43% less people in the work areas. And so we're harvesting maybe the bitter fruits of that. But as Mar suggests, we have to build all of these technologies across. There's 25 million households in the Philippines. All of them need fiber, copper, mobile internet, however they can get it.
Right.
Yes. Hello, Sir Willie. Just to add earlier to what Mr. Genio and Mr. Tamayo said regarding the towers. Yes, actually, that's one of the main problems is the lack of ICT infrastructure, both for the government and the private sector. That's why we're actually pushing to actually fast track and increase the ICT infrastructure. Like what Mr. Tamayo said, it's not only the towers, it's also the other ICT infrastructure, the fiber cables, the cable landing stations, the bandwidth that enters the country. But of course, the towers also play a major role because with this, we can actually reach more coverage and farther areas. Because one of the main problems in the country is we have a lot of underserved and unserved areas. So in this part, dapat magtulungan din yung private sector saka yung government. So one of the mandates, of course, of the government is actually to provide internet also in this unserved and unserved areas through the free Wi-Fi project. But of course, sana din magtulungan din yung mga telcos to also provide in these underserved, unserved areas. Tapos kanina po, napakaganda po ng sinabi ni Senator Grace po regarding doon po sa kanilang mga inisyatibo doon sa Senate. I agree. Yung maganda doon is we actually need competition also in the country. So tama nga naman, may competition like what Mr. Genio said, they're actually increasing their mga services right now. So with the entry of the third telco, of course, ito yung 3 telcos natin ngayon are actually improving all their services para makahabol tayo. And that's a good initiative for us also. Yun po. And on the part of the government, we're doing everything we can para mas mapabilis po yung pag-roll out ng towers. And tama po yung sinabi ni na before, yung sa mga homeowners, there's a lot of permits required also for barangays and local governments. Ngayon po, wala na lahat yon. So hopefully, tuloy-tuloy na. And with the help of Mr. Genio and Mr. Tamayo, yan, tuloy-tuloy na tayo. We can reach the number of towers as our mga neighbors. Yung sabi ni Mr. Genio, 90,000. Kung maabot natin yon, tatayo, hati sila ng yung 3 telcos will put it up para mas mapabilis yung coverage natin sa ating bansa.
Yes, Mark, please.
Yeah, if I may add, just to echo some of the comments here. Rolling out in an archipelago and in a country, in the countryside presents unique challenges, really. This has to be taken into consideration. However, we are committed to doing this. Just very recently, if you read in the news, we fired up an LTE base station in Pag-asa. That's a very remote area, but we are committed to doing that. We have been constantly improving our services by expanding our network wherever possible. That's why it's really important that both companies, private sectors, and the government help each other in doing this. And to Mr. Echaus' point, Common Tower, we are really in support of that, and we are actually engaging already several of your designated tower companies. We started talking, and we are setting to pilot about 200 sites already. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Bayanihan 2, which suspended most permits for telecoms infra, will expire, I think, in mid-December, December 18 or 19. How is that changed? How is that window of opportunity changed your targets? At least theoretically, one should think that it would be faster now to build towers within that period.
But maybe Willie, just to correct the impression, while the Bayanihan 2 Act itself expires in December, in reality, in the provisions of the Bayanihan 2 gave a 3-year window to waive, as the senator mentioned earlier, waive most of the permits and just limited it to just 3 things that we will have to do on building permit, the height clearance, as well as clearing the homeowner's approval. So we do have a 3-year window to be able to get all of this done. And we're so far away from our neighboring countries. But we will get there, I think.
Well, it's not only the number of towers, no, I think, but I've read discussions where there are new technologies in this matter. I understand there are smaller, more modern cell sites, for instance, available in the market. They could be cheaper rather than putting up a tower. How do emerging technologies affect your infrastructure rollout?
But that's correct. That's part of the additional sites, for example, that both actually all 3 players are doing, are taking advantage of all of these new things. For example, 5G has smaller antennas. Most of the time, people use as a mental image a self-supporting like 4-masted tower as a classic cell site. But you now see cell sites on top of poles, even lamp poles. For example, in some of the villages, you will see antennas on top of posts as well. So a little bit, of course, there are trade-offs. You have to do more of that. But I think telcos in the Philippines will get sites wherever they can get it from. And if poles are available, then so be it. And there's also newer technologies, like, for example, for more remote locations, long-range Wi-Fi as possible. There have been a number of pilots or experiments in the Philippines about using long-range Wi-Fi to serve more remote communities if cell sites are not possible. And so many of these things go to exactly the same point, which is also what Mar was saying, right? Certainly in more remote areas, the challenge is faced by everyone. And all of the telcos are trying to put together solutions to be able to serve even far-flung communities together with the government.
Yeah, I was reading in the comments that someone said, "Hey, why is everyone talking about focused on the towers? Now there are other factors. Could you just briefly talk about those things?" He was talking about fiber optic cabling, high capacity routers, and the sheer volume of low capacity phones. What are the other infrastructure factors that weigh on this map, other than towers?
If I may answer that.
Yes.
As I mentioned earlier, it's not just building cell site, it's an ecosystem. And it starts with the phone. The phone should be compatible with the network. For example, if you look at the high-end phone, it's capable of doing 50 Mbps per second, and a lower-end phone or an entry-level phone can probably just give you sub 20 Mbps on a good day. But having said that, as I've said, tower is just a piece of the whole ecosystem. You need to have that robust infrastructure called fiber optic. Not only the fiber optic that you connect the cell site, but also the fiber optic that you connect the Philippines to the outside world.
Right.
And this, before you can lay that out, you need permits, you need the help of the LGUs.
Right. Well, you've heard both the good senator and the DICT lay down their plans to help the industry meet demand. But on your part, is there anything else that you would bring up to the policymakers, you'd like the policymakers to address to help improve services, especially during these times for the telcos? None. Well,
I'll take a crack if I may. No.
I'm sorry, was that question directed to me?
I said to the good senator and the DICT. I was asking the telco
Could you repeat the question again, sir?
Right. I was asking the telcos, ma'am, if because we've heard all the plans in your committee and also the DICT. And given the current trying conditions in the country, I was asking the telcos if they had anything that they would want policymakers, anything more they would want policymakers to address to help improve, to help address current conditions. And I think Hill was about to say something.
Well, I was going to take a crack at it. Post Bayanihan 2 Act, I can only think of two more things. No, one is that, and I think the ICT has done a wonderful job talking about the more remote communities. I think the telcos and the ICT can work better together to define in which areas can the national government play a role, particularly where clearly in the past they have been underserved. No, the more remote communities, because I think a cooperative arrangement between the telcos and the ICT with respect to their broadband program can fast track some of these things. Acknowledging, of course, that sometimes the government also doesn't necessarily have a full budget in order to be able to address this quickly. And of course, the second area that I can think of now is that the current pandemic has created disruptions in labor force, and so the ability of labor force mobility to be deployed nationally, wherever we can get people to be able to work on a construction program, would help. So whether it's basically redeploying, retraining, rescaling, for example, some of our OFWs have come back, or even those who have been for one reason or another have lost some employment, and whether we can reskill them to do the reconstruction or the construction work, both for fiber as well as for cell sites. Those would be great opportunities for both government and private sector to work
on. Thank you very much. I think the center, has a hearing to attend. I think I was given a note. Senator, would you want to say some remarks? I understand you will have to leave for a hearing.
Yes, actually, I'm running back and forth because I'm also doing an online on the committee on appointments. First, again, thank you to BusinessWorld for organizing this, Mr. Reyes, also for your moderation of this talk that we have. Somebody pointed out that we are focusing on cell sites alone. That's not true. In fact, in Bayanihan 2, we are talking about IT infrastructure in general. I know that landing stations are crucial, fiber cables, as well as cell towers. And of course, when it comes to infrastructure, all of these cables that are obsolete or outdated or old needs to be replaced. And that's part of the infrastructure program for the IT services. And as you mentioned also, Mr. Genio mentioned, and I'm glad that you did, that now policymakers should be able to point out which are the underserved areas. But I'm sure the telco companies also know which ones these areas are, which areas these are, and we are trying our best, of course, to be able to roll out as much as possible in these underserved areas, but it's also the responsibility of the telco to be able to provide that and not just concentrate in an area that is most profitable. With the National Broadband Program, and I'm glad to hear that the DICT has mentioned this in Aurora, that you will be putting up a landing site or um, something to do with the infrastructure project for the cell towers. I mean, for cables. I think that's very important. As noted, we are an archipelago, so we need as many of these landing sites and also marine cables to be updated. So moving forward, the digital infrastructure makes for good investments. Studies have shown that increasing broadband penetration by just 10% has resulted in an increase of 1.38% in GDP in developing countries. Increasing speed by just zero point 0.5 Mbps resulted in the increase of $800 in annual income for one household alone in countries like Brazil, India, and China. Thus, it will be our interest to continue to invest in digital technology. With the passage of the laws which we filed, we hope that more areas will be served, that we succeed in closing the digital gap, and that the quality and affordability of internet service will improve. We expect more players to enter the telecommunications industry. This is not just limited to DITO. We're glad that Converge is also there, and many others are trying to roll out. We will hopefully translate into better products and services. For instance, although we have DITO who committed to at least cover 37% of the population in its first year of business and up to 84% in its fifth year, it also promised to provide internet speed of 27 Mbps on average for the first year. And if they can't deliver by March on their minimum promises, they will have a bond to forfeit. So just yesterday, I sponsored more franchises like Cruise Telephone Company, Crucelco, Tandag Electric Telephone Company, and Bayantel Incorporated, which they promise they will focus on MSMEs. So with that, better internet accessibility will improve e-commerce. The pandemic has made us painfully aware of our system's weaknesses, but it should also give us the resolve and urgency to improve it significantly. Right now, as mentioned, about 23% are working from home. I don't think that will drastically be reduced. I think now that if services are improved, we can say, pwede palang magtrabaho sa bahay. So I hope that in cooperation with our private sector, that the government will be able to address the needs of our countrymen more effectively. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator, for gracing this episode, and thank you for your insights today. I understand she's been very busy. She's multitasking. Gentlemen, before we end, I'd just like to ask, we've been talking about the forest, which is the industry. But now, can you tell our viewers who are individual internet consumers, what's the bottom line? What difference are we supposed to feel by the end of this year and into next year? Because we've been talking about all these plans and what's being done. Would you like to take a crack at that? What are individual consumers or internet users supposed to? What kind of improvements are we supposed to feel within this year and next year? Or what can we expect? Is there? Okay, well.
Oh, yes. Kanino address, Professor?
I know it's a very difficult question. But, to anyone, Mar was raising his hand.
Okay. Sige, yung telcos na muna, sir.
Yeah, okay. As I mentioned earlier, PLDT and Smart will continue to invest, continue to build the network. The way we are doing it right now is very surgical, relying heavily on data analytics, looking at where to expand. But we also hear what people are saying. That's why we're also going into the rural areas. And also on the topic of affordability, we have progressively offered a variety of services at different price points. We are trying to find that balance between matching the need of the customers and their ability to purchase their services. So you'll see that more and more in our offers. But first things first, we have to fix the basics. We have to make sure that we have a reliable and always available internet connectivity, or whether it's fiber or cellular. So you can expect a progressive improvement of the service until end of the year and towards next year.
Thank you, Mark.
I can follow Mark. I think if I think about let's think about this year as well as in the next couple of years, right? So we're trying to solve multiple problems at the same time. There's, as I mentioned, 25 million households. Households really need fiber, and to credit of everyone, there's now three very active, aggressive players trying to put fiber in all of these households. So where people can get, sometimes they rely on wireless, but to me, from a technology perspective, the 25 million households really should have fiber, and to the degree that we will do so, we will continue to be aggressive, similar to the two other fiber players in the country. Historically, as I said, on the wireless, there's been always some resistance on residential areas or homeowners associations that has prevented good quality of service. But now that all of these stumbling blocks have been removed, what we have also done is two-pronged. One is that historically, for example, when you try to call or be called, if you have poor signal, you have some issues. But generally, if you have Wi-Fi or even 4G services, and some frequencies are able to penetrate households better than other frequencies, part of Globe's commitment is that we will actually utilize across the entire spectrum of frequencies from 700 all the way up to 2600, all of the frequencies that are available, to put LTE so that you can get good service from a mobile data perspective inside your house. And as long as you have data service from mobile data or Wi-Fi, you should be able to call using technologies like voice over LTE or even voice over Wi-Fi. And I think there's also a race going on between the operators on 5G. We should be able to cover a relatively large portion of what I would call Mega Manila with 5G by the end of this year, and of course progressively in the years to come, covering even more cities. So that's what's in store.
Thank you, Hill. Attorney, were you going to say something?
Just to add, so in terms of this year, well, during the speech of President Duterte, nag-ano naman siya sa mga telcos to improve their services by the end of the year. So currently, the DICT, we're actually part of a telecom monitoring group with the NTC, saka iba pang agencies. So tinitingnan naman namin. So I think may mga reports naman from NTC and dito sa mga telcos. So we're actually giving naman our mga reports and suggestions sa Office of the President para kung anong magagawa natin. But definitely, yung internet speed natin ngayon, it can do better. We're not satisfied. Of course, we want to improve the services ng internet sa ating bansa. In relation to this, tama yung kaninang sinabi ni Senator Grace po, yung entry ng third telco that has 27 minimum speed. So according to them naman, they're actually on track with their rollout, I believe, so next year, March 2021. We will see with the entry nila of their commercial rollout, mas magano. There's going to be better competition, and there's going to be, ayun nga, mas mabibilis yung ano natin, because we need competition also in our country para maging more competitive yung mga prices and mas malawak yung mga coverage. And tama si Senator Po kanina when she said that actually if the third telco cannot achieve its goals, may bond din sila na ma-forfeit in favor of the government. That's around 25.7 billion. So we're hopeful. We're hopeful na more telcos come in. We're hopeful na mas mapabilis yung internet speed. By the end of the year, yun rin nga, aside from itong mga helping also the telcos sa mga towers, and the other infrastructures. Of course, we're also pushing also for yung sarili naman, yung government, yung may sariling backbone, may sarili naman tayong infrastructure din. Para hindi naman natin iasa lahat sa mga telcos. Of course, tulong-tulungan, but of course, the government should have its own also para we can become more competitive also with the other countries. So yan po yung aming sinusulong ngayon. Hopefully, matuloy at saka mas mapabilis because with the own government backbone, we can provide for the mga government offices. In relation also, si Mr. Genio mentioned kanina yung possible policies or partnerships or tie-ups. Actually, I believe there are also that's more than willing yon sa broadband, of course, para hindi na rin magdoble-doble if you have infrastructure sa area na to. Makakatulong kayo sa middle mile and last mile po with in relation to yung sa backbone namin. So it also has to be magtulungan din yung DICT with the telcos para we can reach farther areas and yung mga unserved and underserved areas. Yun lang. Hopefully by the end of the year mag-improve na yung internet natin.
Thank you, Attorney. Maybe now we'll just go. It's 13 minutes past noon time, so maybe we can have our speakers closing statements. Maybe you can start with Mar.
Yeah, thank you. Rest assured that PLDT-Smart will continue to improve network coverage and capacity. We will further increase our fiber optic cable footprint, and we will raise the number of fiber ports because this is what we really need. Smart, on the other hand, intends to conduct expansion activities on its cell sites nationwide to further improve coverage and connectivity. In relation to the tower companies, we have top 6 tower companies already to build the initial batch of 200 common towers with Globe and Dito, pursuant to the government's common tower policy. This will help us in a big way to reach out to the rest of the unserved and underserved areas in the country. As the government has started breaking down barriers, we expect faster implementation of our rollout. In fact, we are seeing this already. As this progresses further, this will lead to faster delivery of our network expansion efforts, which in turn will improve our speeds and enable us to reach more of our fellow Filipinos. We will strive together with our fellow operators to bring world-class internet to everyone. Again, our main ambition is to bring the Philippines as one of the top in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mar. Here we will have you next.
Thank you for listening to this discussion. I think that there is progress on internet speeds, average internet speeds. And as I mentioned, these are all averages. But none of this will matter if an individual, a household, or a business feels that they have been left out because their speeds are not up to scratch, or they don't have coverage, or they have no fiber, etc. And I acknowledge that even where I live, which is a residential subdivision, I have no signal because for the longest time, basically decades, people just refuse to have cell sites. We are going to attack that problem one by one. And that's our commitment, both in terms of spending as well as commitment to actually go through and make sure that every individual and household have choices with respect to what kind of internet they should have, whether it's fiber or a mobile internet service. We cannot do this overnight. We cannot do this alone. Thanks to the government that has listened, and we now have a clear window with respect to the permits. So now it's part of our job to make sure all of this happens. But our commitment is to make sure that every Filipino, in fact, does have that access.
Thank you very much, Shil. And finally, but not the least, we have Attorney Randy. Your closing statement, please.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Willie, Mr. Tamayo, Mr. Genio, and all our listeners. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for listening to our projects and programs in the department. Hopefully, hopefully the internet speed in the country will increase. Hopefully, this partnerships and collaboration between the public and private sector will continue. So what we did, we're actually facilitating the easier process of the telcos and tower providers to push for large-scale infrastructure development. Of course, kailangan din naman yung ICT infrastructure for both for private and for public. So, ang lang namin is siguro tiwala rin sa government. We're actually in the department, we're actually doing the best we can to actually improve the internet connectivity. We've actually for the past ilang years na rin, the speed has actually increased. But of course, we're not satisfied. We want it more. We want better connectivity. We want more coverage in our country. So with our programs, sana tuloy-tuloy po ito. And for 2021, sana yung budget namin ma-achieve so we can actually cover the entire Philippines with the internet through our national broadband program. So yun lang. So our listeners, just keep supporting our projects and programs. For the telco providers, we thank you for supporting our common tower policy. Pero kulang pa. Damihan pa po natin para mas marami yung coverage po natin. Ayun lang po. Thank you very much, everybody.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Randy. And that wraps it up for this edition of BusinessWorld Insights. We'd like to thank Mr. Mario Tamayo of PLDT, Mr. Genio of Globe, Attorney Randy Echaus of DICT, and Senator Grace Poe. And we'd like to thank all our viewers. We have actually taken careful note of your comments, and our speakers have actually asked us to forward your comments to them for possible action and consideration. Join us again a week from now on October 7 at 11 a.m. for the next episode on how digital payments have been coping with growing demand. Until then, keep well and please stay safe.
Break through a world where big data beats your worries. A world that gives you priority when innovations come. This is the GigaLife own Smart Signature. Simplified by the Philippines' fastest mobile data network. The choice is simple. Move up to Smart Signature and make your mark. How do I know it's meant to be? Simple, smart ako.
Mahigit sa 20,000 na ang confirmed.
Kailangan ng PPE para
Sa ilalim na ang Metro Manila sa
Wala na. Wala munang mga food court at fiesta. Meron namang lutong bahay. Wala munang window shopping. Meron namang free shipping. Wala munang happy hour. Pero may isang oras pa. Tulog pa tayo. Wala muna yung aircon at only coffee sa office. Pero andyan yung dream office mate natin. Biruin mo, wala munang quiz night, band night, samgyup night, pati videoke night. Pero meron ng time sa family night. Wala na munang pasyalan, wala na munang bakasyonan. Okay lang siguro mawala lahat ng yon. Huwag lang ito. Kasi may mga bagay na walang kapalit. May mas mahalaga ba dito? Wala. Rediscover what matters. Rediscover home.
In a Business 4.0 world, we analyze, adapt, transform, and grow. With over 400,000 IT experts, Tata Consultancy Services leverages the power of digital technologies to reshape global businesses and industries, empowering communities and individuals across the world, building a better future, future forward.
Oy, TikTok ba yan? Oy, sali. Oy, whoa. That's good. That was beautiful.
Okay, I'm uploading now.
Uploadable, yeah.
I'm uploading.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, ito na.
If you had 5G, uploaded na yan, like, right away.
Wow, what a segue.
Hey, I can do that too. Because today's episode is about journey to 5G.
So, Mikael, for an average person like me, what is 5G? How is that different from the 4G on my phone right now?
Okay, let's rewind to the days of 1G. Take these guys out. 1G started back in the 80s, and back then you could only do analog voice calls. And then 2G came in the 90s. We had another cell tower because we could do voice calls and SMS, aka
texting.
Tama.
Yes.
And then with 3G, that enabled us to browse the web on our phones, which was super cool back in the day. And 4G, of course, we know this. We're streaming content all day, every day, with everybody around us. And then, of course, we have 5G.
5G.
This is just mind-blowing. It opens
Mind-blowing.
up so many possibilities.
So many
It's
possibilities.
crazy. It's super exciting.
It's super exciting.
It's everything.
It's everything. So, parang gusto ko na ngayon mag 5G. It's fast, no?
Oh, yeah, it is. I actually have an analogy for you. Let's take these people out. So imagine 4G is like you're on a 2-lane highway. You're in your sedan, driving along with other cars. But on 5G, you're in a 10-lane highway in your sports car.
Wow,
Super
intense!
fast. Yeah.
0 to 60 in no time. Look at me, car reference.
Yeah, that's actually really important because 0 to 60 is referring to latency, which is also faster in 5G.
Let's go back to the car.
One more analogy. I got you. So if speed is referring to how fast the cars are going, latency is referring to the driver's reaction to when the stoplight turns green.
Okay.
Super quick. Not as quick.
Sounds awesome. So my Instagram videos are gonna be crisp.
Yeah, they're gonna be super crispy, but 5G does have its drawbacks.
Okay.
Is that 5G has a shorter range, which means it requires more base stations to cover the same number of people in one area. Fortunately, though, there is a pro. 5G base stations and antennas are more compact, which means they're easier to install than 4G.
Okay, so thanks for telling me the pros and cons, but I still think it's pretty worth it, you know? My mobile content consumption will be on point.
Oh yeah, it definitely will be, but just wait until you hear the potential use cases for 5G. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Think a smart city where you're having drones delivering packages to you.
Wow.
Super cool, right? This is my favorite. Self-driving cars, that's the future.
Okay, I'm game for all of that. I'm so ready. I'm gonna start saving up right now. Where's my
You
mobile?
actually might not have to save up too much because
Why?
there are a lot of affordable 5G phones out right now. I know one is the Huawei Nova 7 SE. My wife has that. Hi, wife.
And hi, everyone.
Oh, it's okay, Janina. But anyway, stick around for the next episode if you want to know the actual use cases of 5G today.
Oh nga, months na. Hi, Dad. Don't you love your favorite only daughter? You know, I
Very
love you.
professional.
I love you. I'm probably gonna cut it out anyway.
And they might not. Thank you guys so much for watching, and to learn more about 5G and how it brings us closer than ever to the future, don't forget to watch Possibilities, the 5G series.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Globe on the Radar YouTube channel, as well as turn on that notification bell para you guys won't miss us that much.
Galing talaga. That's Janina.
That's Mikael.
See you guys.
Bye!
you.